this episode of the Tangent Podcast, where we will most certainly get off topic.
If we had a topic.
Yeah, if we had a topic. It's a pink episode, so we're talking about like our mental, our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it. And so let's start off with our tri-weekly
inner
check-in.
being.
Yes, the inner being.
Inner being. Mm-hmm.
So let's start off with our tri-weekly check-in, where we, every 3 weeks, try to come up with a goal for ourselves and check in to see how we've done. What do you got for me, Victor?
Well, this is like the first tri-weekly spirit soul check-in of this season. So it's going to be more setting it up, I guess, for next week, and less saying how I did it. Mine's kind of weird, I suppose. Just because it's kind of a body and soul one, I guess, wrapped into one. But a lot of things, that's the problem with some of these stuff, is that one of them, definitely bleeds into the other, one of the other areas, and that's kind of how balance works.
I hope your body's not bleeding. That sounds bad.
Yeah.
You should get that checked out.
So
maybe get a bandage or something.
Yeah, it's not something. I don't know. New body, more like.
Yeah, maybe.
Last night, because I've been sick, as I've been talking about, and I finally felt good. And like Karen and I built a bed and a couch, so it's not like I've been like stagnant on, in not doing anything. We've been moving heavy like IKEA furniture and constructing it. But we had time finally after a while, and I've been feeling better. And I was like, let's yoga. Not because I never say let's do yoga. Let's yoga. So she's got an app that's super phenomenal. It's like you can customize the type of session it takes you through, between the length, the type of positions you go through, and it's all pre-recorded, but they cycle through different loops. And I mean, it takes you through a whole yoga flow, which is great. So we did that. And the result was, because I always love how every good yoga session ends in, I think they call it like Siddhasana, like where you're laying on your back. I always call it corpse position, because you lay flat on your back with your arms at your side and you just melt into the ground and completely relax. And then you just stay there for like 5 minutes. And they play like gentle music. This is great. I love it. And then, as we were talking off mic, I was saying that while I was making my grilled cheese today, I ran through the Yang set of the Yang 10 Tai Chi stuff that I was doing, but I did it very slow and methodical. Like, I wasn't just trying to get through it. I was really enjoying each of the movements, and that's what Tai Chi really is. It's moving meditation. And I felt amazing afterwards. Like, I felt centered. I felt balanced. I then did something immediately afterwards that spiked my anxiety, as we talked about before, but we're not going to get into that. But it was great. So I think for me, long story, not as long, hopefully, I'm going to try to mix in more like meditative flow arts into my physical training as I start to kind of build back up into a workout regimen, as my body's not getting sick anymore, just so that I keep like a good spiritual core, spiritual center, emotional center, whatever you want to call it. Not just working out, so that I do some more. I want to put in some more yoga. I want to put in some more Tai Chi, maybe get back into my Bagua meditative stances. Next week, I'm resuming my Bagua.
Bagua, cool.
I'm resuming my Bagua lessons on February 1st, so I'm super excited about that. Although if you're listening to this when it posts, I would have already been resuming my Bagua lessons. I would have, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, I would have already had 2, because you can't listen to this until Saturday.
Yeah, true. But okay, so it's your.
And what about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I was thinking about it this entire time that you were talking.
Yeah. I've also been burning more candles again recently, and just kind of creating a better more calming atmosphere where I'm at. I'm
Candles
just
are great.
talking now
I love candles.
give you more time to
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about
Well,
what
speaking of
you're gonna
candles,
say.
I'm gonna have to go light one in a second because I forgot to. But I was burning one that was apples and acorns, and it was actually a really good smell. I don't know what it is about acorns when they're added to apples that makes them smell good, but apples and acorns, fantastic smell. Would recommend to anyone else. Yeah. So my tri-weekly check-in for the soul, spirit. I kind of just want to be more centered, more focused. I spent a lot of time like with my mind wandering on other things, which is not always good. It's good diversity, but it also can be a hindrance. And so I think that will be what my check-in is I want to be more focused. I want to be more centered on specific things versus wandering to others.
That's really hard too. I mean, even today, Karen and I were talking as she was getting ready for work, and I was just coming home because I had nothing to do when I showed up at work today. Which, you know, as a younger person, like when I was younger, I was like, sweet day off. As an older person, I'm like, no money. So like, it's not really what I like to do. But we just kept talking about like this thing we want to do, that thing we want to do, that thing, and like we have all these projects that need to get done, but we'll be in the middle of one, and then
and then you switch to another one, and it's just like
switch to another one.
You're making progress on all of them, which is cool,
right.
But then you're also making like not even 1% progress per week, you know?
Yeah. And that's like with the IKEA furniture, like it was good because the old couches that we had ordered or that we had that we were replacing, we set a day for bulk pickup, because unlike in New Jersey where you have like where curbs are magic and you can just leave your garbage on them and then they'll disappear the next day because someone will say, ooh, a couch. You have to actually call for bulk pickup, and you get like it's not even one free bulk pickup per year. It's like you get one pickup for free of up to 5 items. So here's the thing: we had her old bed and the 2 old couches, the box spring to her bed, and she had this random elliptical that
but
her
you're
neighbor.
In Kansas, so that's like when you could just have a good old-fashioned bonfire and burn it all. You know, just throw that bed right on top. We're still in
a suburban neighborhood. We can't do that.
Yeah,
but it was good because she called, and this is where we always talk about goals come in handy.
Yeah.
She called ahead of time and was like, all right, bulk pickup is coming on Thursday. And I'm like, sweet.
And then
you know
it
what that
snowed
means?
and got canceled.
No. But I was like, you know what that means? It means that we have to get the couches and your bed out on the curb by Wednesday night, and then we have to build those things. Otherwise, we have no couches and you have no bed.
Right.
And so it was a really good motivator.
Not having furniture is a pretty good motivator.
Yeah. So, but staying focused is great.
I think let's talk about that. I want to, because you were talking about meditations, but like martial meditations, and so I was thinking of just like, what are some other ways that you can meditate, but also not have it be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit for 20 minutes or whatever and like actually meditate
in silence.
What are some like ways to meditate without meditating, or like just centering yourself in that zone while doing other things, or not doing other things, but like while being productive at the same time? This week I am notoriously bad at making schedules for myself. I know it's horrible. But this week I was not bad at that. I was good at it. I came up with a schedule for everything I wanted to do throughout the week. I put it down, and every day in the morning I woke up. I looked, okay, what am I going to do? I set myself up for the day to do that thing. And then I did it, and then that was the end of it. And that was, in a way, that was sort of a meditative practice for myself, because I didn't have to focus on anything else. I just knew what my plan was. I was going to, so for example, I was working on my portfolio for programming and such. That was my task for yesterday. And so I set myself up to do that. I opened up the proper applications on my computer, and I sat down and I did it. Whereas other days I'll wake up in the morning and be like, oh, what do I want to get done today? I've got this to do, I've got this to do, I've got this to do, I've got this to do. And then I'll pick from one of them, and then I'll get one done, and I'll be like, oh, there was this other thing that I wanted to do. And so sometimes I'll switch. And I've started realizing that this meditating without meditating, whenever I meditate, you want to just try to focus on the moment, focus on your own, not your own thoughts, but like your own existence at a single point in time, at that time being the present, and trying to mimic, copy, maintain that same sort of feeling while also trying to be productive at the same time. Planning and scheduling and saying, okay, this is what I'm focusing on, this is what I'm centering myself on, has been very helpful in that regard. And so I want to, as part of, what I was talking about for the tri-weekly check-in, is being more centered. I feel like that's part of this whole grand scheme of meditating while not meditating, staying mindful while being productive, while living in the moment, as opposed to, because I mean, honestly, once you get the hang of it, once you get into the habit of it, sitting and meditating and just focusing it gets easier. Just like any muscle that you train, right? It gets easier over time.
Mm-hmm.
What is difficult is going out into the real world and living and being in the chaos that is life, and still trying to maintain that like centered focusedness. That's not a word, but sure.
No, I absolutely get that. It's interesting, if anyone listened at all to last season 1, or if you listened and watched live the notorious season 0 that no longer exists, I talked a lot about Google Calendars, and the beginning of, sorry, not the beginning, the end of last year, mainly November, December, end of October-ish a little bit, because I was doing half of my work from home, half not, I shouted the praises of Google Calendars. Like, on Sunday, I would go in and look at the whole week, the whole next week, Monday through Saturday, and I literally would set specific tasks for specific days. I put the days that I was moving dog food for the pet store right up there.
Right.
And then I could also see Karen's work schedule too, so that I could see like days that we both had off, which are never, generally Sunday. But I could see when she was at work, when she was coming home, when like I'd have to coordinate things, and I would set tasks up. I was super good at doing that. I was super good at creating that, focusing in on the things that I needed to focus, and then in the coming week, I had no anxiety, I had no stress about what tasks needed to get done, because I knew what I was doing. I woke up each day and I knew exactly what I was going to be about. Notoriously, as January 1st hit, I have been garbage at that. I have literally not scheduled a single week this entire month. And it's got me,
and it's the 27th,
all over the
by
place.
the way, for anyone who's not listening to this. Why?
In real time, yeah. It's the end of the month.
It's literally towards the end of the month.
And I'm all over the place. It's not saying that, like, I've not been productive. It's, I feel so scatterbrained and anxiety about everything that, like,
so
I don't know what I'm doing.
That is just...
Like, you got the text messages from me yesterday and the day before, like, I sat down to do stuff even for the Tangents podcast and Realm of Logres in
Right.
like in general.
Mm.
And because I wasn't focused, I was like doing this, and I just kept texting you. I did this. I'm gonna do this. Okay, it's done. I did it, and it like into the night. And the last text that I sent you, I saw that it was like 8, somewhere in the evening, and I was like,
I remember.
I'm like, I shouldn't have your silenced notifications for the night were already activated.
Yeah, that's
so
yeah, that's right. Because I ended up checking my phone I don't remember why I checked my phone, but I was like, why do I have a text from Victor? And it was like, oh hey, I was doing this can you help me with this thing? And I was like, my silence notifications are on. I'm
that's
on
sleep
me. Mode.
That's on me, not on you, because if I had set the week up like I normally did last year,
that would have
been done
way earlier in the day.
Right. I would have carved time out, and that time would have been specifically done, and I wouldn't have been distracted. Plus, the actual act of making the schedule on Sunday, taking 15 to 20 minutes to actually sit down and look at the week, that's restful for me.
Yeah, so life is super chaotic, but I feel like part of satisfaction, part of getting that restfulness is trying to make your own kind of order from it, and scheduling and setting time to lay stuff out so you don't have to think about that, I think goes a long way towards that. There was a point in time where I was doing like meal plans or meal prepping. So I would
meal
prep
prepping used to be great. Great thing.
Yeah, and I was eating way more consistently at the same times. Also, like just eating food. Sometimes I'll forget to eat. I'll be working. I'm like, oh, I forgot to eat, and then I'll go do that. But yeah, that was another part of like just getting that down, getting it concrete, and like succeeding in that. So I think there's definitely a lot to be said about allocating time to just plan stuff, to just create this little semblance of order in the chaos that is life. And I think that even when you're meditating by yourself, there's still that like aspect of it, of just centering yourself, finding that order, finding that consistency of just calm. And I guess it'd be good to touch upon like meditation and what it's not, or what.
Well, you said a good thing.
Okay.
You said a good thing.
I said a good thing.
When you said centering yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the end of the month.
Yeah.
The end of last month, I had one of the guys who came up through the ranks at the dojo after me. I'm not going to use his name. Call me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having a lot of family stuff going on, and he was family stuff, work stuff, this stuff, and he called me because he said, admittedly, I know that you've done the yoga stuff because you started to talk about it before. The person, he's like, you have my training certification. I'm really I'm really stressed out, and I'm feeling all of these negative effects on my body. So like, is there anything that you recommend me doing to start? And I said, yeah, your brain is everywhere. That's the other thing. Mm-hmm. So number one, all of the things that you can't control, let them go. And guess what? Most of the things in your head right now, you have no control over. So you get to let go of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. The other thing though, too, is people think that I have to carve out this huge time of 30 minutes to an hour where I get in a cold, dark room, and like I would love to get to a place where I can consistently carve out blocks of time to sit in silence and do seated or standing meditation, because those are helpful. But what I was telling him was, because I started writing a book, not really a book, just thoughts on it. I shared them with you once before on my breathing techniques and stuff, where I was approaching it like if I was going to create a martial arts form on how to breathe and not hyperventilate, like have a panic attack, what would I do? And I came up with 3 forms, technique 1, 2, and 3 is all I call them. And I walked him through. I said, you need to find 60 seconds a day
Mm.
where you pull away and you don't take your phone with you. Don't take anything. Tell your wife she can't come with you. You're doing this for your own health so that you can like be helpful in the household, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
you can be able to move. And you need to just take 60 seconds. And for that 60 seconds, sit in a comfortable position
Mm-hmm.
and take deep, long breaths. There's nothing magical about the deep, long breaths. That's what I was explaining to him. But what I wanted him to do was spend that time focusing only on the sound of breathing in and breathing out.
Mm-hmm.
There's an author that I talk about a lot. I've read a couple of his books called Thich Nhat Hanh.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Buddhist monk. He lives in France now, in a monastery in France. A lot of books that he's written, and they're all great. And he talks in Buddhism. They talk a lot about mindfulness, and the reason they don't talk while they're eating is because how can you talk to the person across from you while you're also taking in the flavor and texture of the food that you're eating?
Right.
You can't fully enjoy the conversation. You can't fully enjoy the meal. You're sacrificing both for the sake of doing the same at the same time. So stop. One, be mindful, be present. And so when you sit and meditate and you're breathing, right? You're breathing in, breathing out, just focusing on your breathing. You're not doing anything like super mystical.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing is you're stopping your brain from being out here and you're pulling in and focusing on one thing. When I studied the Bible at my Bible school, one of the things that I always think
Bible
was
college,
cool was
university.
college. Yeah, sorry, university. Is I always approached the Bible as an English major because it's 66 books. It's not one book. It's 66 books by 34-ish authors compiled into one manuscript. That's kind of cool because you have the different genres. However, I also know that it's not written originally in English. So different words, I know enough Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek.
Right, a lot of stuff
Latin
is translated from
to be dangerous.
Right.
Like I'm not fluent in any of those, but I'm
different connotations can be translated into another connotation.
So
like
a
Greek
lot of times
can mean one thing, and then English could be transliterated to a different connotation.
A lot of times, because a lot of these early cultures were farming cultures, so agriculture, farming, herding, all those things were big in the cultures. That's why a lot of the analogies are based around agriculture. A lot of times when you see the word meditation, it's the same word that if you trace it's weird to trace the
etymology.
Yeah, thank you. The etymology forward. If you trace the etymology forward, it branches off into two words. One that we now use as meditate, and the other one that is the biological process that a cow goes through to chew its grass. Because a cow has 4 stomachs, and when a cow eats, it can't digest grass. Like, this is why humans can't digest grass, because we only have 1 stomach. So it chews on the grass.
I
right?
did not know that was the information I was going to be learning today.
Listen,
but that's cool.
Listen. So a cow chews on the grass, gets it, swallows it, and it goes in its one stomach, mixes up. It then vomits it back up in the form of cud. That's why you always see cows just chewing for hours. It's the same thing. They're chewing on the same thing that they were chewing at the beginning of the hour, and then they swallow it back down to the second stomach, and this process repeats. That's the word a lot of the times, especially in the Old Testament books, that it's always translated as meditation. What is that if not being present on the task at hand, not being distracted, but being fully focused on one thing that's going on? That's such a great picture for me.
It's a picture. I wouldn't call it a great picture, but I would say it's definitely a good analogy. I don't know if it's...
Well, I would just say it changed the way that I looked at the word meditation.
Yeah.
It then stopped becoming a mystical thing where I have to sit in a closed, dark closet.
Right.
When I used to work at a gym, One of the gyms that I worked at, one of the section that I had to clean, we had one of those big machine cleaners that we would run around and do it. I never used it. You want to know why? Because I would love to go into the open floor space, put in one headphone, because my boss would let me put in one headphone so I could listen to music, and just hand mop the whole space. Because the act of having a mop bucket and water, right, and the mop, and just focusing on one thing.
It's very cyclical. Of you wipe, then you put it in, you do the squeeze, and then you go back to it. It's very algorithmic. And
it wasn't like I was shutting my brain. It wasn't like I was shutting my brain off and just doing things robotically. It was. It's that martial arts thing where you're able to shut your brain off from all of the distractions that plague you in the world.
Right. It's not shutting your brain off. It's
right
just
where you're at.
It's just focusing
right where you're at.
Yeah. Another thing about like breathing is like really cool. I was having a conversation with someone who was a trained psychologist, and one of the things that she said was like breathing brings oxygen to your brain. So it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this thing. You're getting more oxygen to your brain, which is good for it. As to the actual biological specifics of what it is, you know, it gets more oxygen in the blood, which does other things for different parts of your body, different organs. I'm not a professional, so I can't quite say, but I do know that oxygen in the blood is good. That's a good thing. That's why we breathe. And so taking that second to breathe, and taking a long, deep breath kind of can shock your brain, almost like jump starting it. That's why if you ever feel like a panic attack is coming on, it's good to just take a second to breathe. Because if you're hyperventilating and if all of your emotions are up here and you're very constrained and you're breathing quickly, you know, you're not getting that full amount of oxygen to your brain. It's not going to be good for your mental state. And so that's why just taking a second to breathe can be beneficial, especially with like meditations and that kind of stuff.
It is crazy how we take certain things for granted, like breathing. You know, we don't think about the fact that it's an automation. It's an automation that our body does.
Right. You stop thinking about breathing, and then it kind of just doesn't go as well.
It's so important. It's so important, and there's something to be said about the regular automated breathing we do, and the difference it makes to like exactly what you did, to stop. Like deep, as much as you can take in, as much as you can let out. It's crazy. Just that act alone, the breathing out, you physically can feel your muscles relax when you do it. There's something that we do a lot in some martial arts forms, like if anyone's ever watched any kata or any form, there's the moments of like the hyper tension, and then they immediately like relax. Over the years, a lot of that thought, a lot of the reasoning behind that has gotten lost. I've had some really interesting conversations with my Sifu about why that original practice was. Specifically, there's a form called Sanshin Sho, where it's, you know, it's practiced in a lot of Japanese forms. It's very hard. It's very rough. It's a very huge isometric exercise.
Well, a lot of the traditional practices of Sanshin Sho involves the instructor striking the student, which is why it's almost as a way to test how rigid or how strong your structure is.
So if you trace it back, right?
Or sorry, I'll say traditional Okinawan, not traditional.
Right, where you leave Okinawa and go back to Japan. I think Sifu was telling me one of the oldest ones that he himself personally has found going back belonged to a white crane style of kung fu. And there's a guy on YouTube, Jesse Enkamp, who he has a video about this, but he doesn't go back beyond the Okinawan version of this form.
Mhm.
And they were saying that it's completely different. Like, it's the way that we did it when we went to that seminar. It's very
Yeah.
relaxed, right? And
Mhm.
so I asked Sifu Martin about that. I was like, well, what is the thing? And he goes, well, it's a difference between people who have time to train their body in that internal relaxation, and then when you have to train soldiers on how to take a punch really quick before you send them to a war zone.
Right.
But one of the conversations I was having with one of his students later on, talking about that isometric
Mhm.
and why they still tense up, it's because how can you really tell what relaxed feels like unless you hyper tense and then you relax? Now
Mhm.
all of a sudden you know what relaxed feels like because you felt its exact opposite,
Right, because you
right?
have that contrast.
Mm-hmm. Like, being in a warm room feels good.
Mhm.
Being in a warm room after you've been
Right.
outside in the
Outside in the
snow,
cold, yeah, shoveling snow. Yeah.
there's no difference.
There's a
There,
complete
there's no
difference. Yeah.
comparison. Complete difference. There's
Yeah.
no comparison to those two things. It, and that's why I liked what you said before, going all the way back, centering yourself. That's what meditation is. It's finding the balance. So if you're hyper
It's finding the
anxious
contrast, you know?
and hyper like focused on all these different things,
Right.
your version of meditation is whatever gets you to pull in and focus in the moment right here, not in the past, not in the future, not on the 20 different things that you think you have to do or all that stuff that's out of your control. It's what's right here, and what's more in my control than my breathing. Okay,
Sure.
so if you want to learn, not learn, because life is learning, it's what we always say, right? If you are a reader and you're looking for some other readings
Mhm.
on meditation, mindfulness, finding balance,
Supplements.
and
Some
center
supplements.
I recommend the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh. You
Yeah,
can look in the episode description.
you
We'll have it.
mentioned
I've
him
talked about him
earlier.
before, but specifically, No Mud, No Lotus. It's a great book. Basically, to sum up the analogy, lotus flowers are some of the most beautiful flowers that you'll ever see, and they grow in swamp. And unless you have like death and decay, swampy, like ground,
Mm-hmm.
lotus will not grow. It's a good analogy in the art of what is in your control, what is not in your control, and basically accepting what is. I've read a bunch of books by him. If you have Audible, like an Audible subscription, some of his books are free on there, or not free. I mean, they come with your $15 a month subscription, but
Right,
you don't have
right.
to spend any credits to get them.
Mhm.
Again, Audible, not a sponsor, unless you want to be. They're really good. I've read, like I said, I read No Mud, No Lotus. I have The Teachings of Buddha, which is on my list for reading this year. So it will be read by the end of this year as I'm reading my
Your
13,000
library
pages.
that's behind you.
Yeah, the remainder of my library. I'm actually doing pretty well. I only have to read 35 pages a day now instead of 36.
That's a whole page less.
A whole page less, yeah. And I have let me bring up this is a tangent, but it's what I do.
Bring up the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the spreadsheet. And that's after finishing 1, 2, 3, 4 books. So I finished 4 of the books on my list. I have 12,005 pages left.
Oh my
I'm
God.
at 35 pages a day. I have already read 1,154 pages. Boy.
Woo!
And January's not even over.
True.
I'm so tired.
That's like half. It's like
I
half
am
of what
so
you need to
tired.
read before January's over. You can slow down a little bit. You could do like.
I can't. According to the spreadsheet, I cannot.
Wait, how? I feel like you did math wrong. Because
I
you're
have
already
12
halfway done.
No, I have 12,000 pages
Oh.
left. I've read 1,000.
You did 1,200. Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
I've done 1,200 pages almost.
Instead
I
of
have
12,000
12,000
Okay,
remaining.
never mind. I take it back. I've
I have 12. I
mixed
cannot
up
slow
my
down.
factors of 10. You can't slow
I
down.
have
Keep
three-
going.
I have
Boost it up to 40
338
pages
more
a
days.
day. But
Well, I'm hoping that one day when like I get into like a book that like I'm really into, and that's already happened. Like some of the books that I've gotten really into, I will read more pages per day than the typical 35.
mm-hmm.
But yeah.
um,
So
that
anyway,
wraps
so
it up, I think.
that wraps it up. I was also gonna just
Our
say
Patreon, our midweek
Yeah.
meditations came out. Next episode of that. So anyone who wants to have that as a way to supplement their meditations, as a way to focus on the moment, focus on, the day that's at hand, that's out there.
it's
We
just
have
a
that.
3 minute of readings, thoughtful readings.
Yeah.
You can listen to it while you're making coffee in the morning. The first one is free and available in the stream. Like you said, the second one is available on our Patreon for just $5 a month. And you get a lot more than that. So
yeah, and you get the other stuff too. And that wraps it up for this episode of the Tangent Podcast, where the unexamined life we've learned is not worth living.